we need to talk about Toronto because we've been asked about it. Tim's asked about it. Jewel TV, I think, because I can't read my screen. Who's this new guy who's going to save Toronto and bring them back to success?
He is a Canadian businessman who apparently is a contact of David Argyle's, not of Eric Perez's. He seems to have some family money and be a CEO of a cosmetics company and director of a few other healthcare companies. That's about all I've been able to find out so far. Yeah, an original shareholder in the club, but I don't know how much that original. I don't imagine that original shareholding is very much. I mean, it does seem very odd, the whole shareholding, and Bill may know more. But it seems like David Argyle had 50 to 60% of the club, but then there was like 49 other shareholders, which just seems absolute madness. But obviously, I'm not Warren Buffett, so I don't, I'm an expert in shareholding in clubs.
I think the Argyle family clearly controlled Toronto One, and the other investors didn't have a huge amount of say, even once the juggernaut had started rolling. Now, I don't know David or his family at all well. I think I met him on maybe 2 or 3 occasions, but it strikes me that it was his way. He was the kind of owner that, I'm the major shareholder, this is how we do it. So I think some of the other smaller shareholders who may have come in under the impression that perhaps they would be involved in the planning of the club going forward felt a tiny little bit disenfranchised. I don't know if that's fair or not. And I think this is one of these minority shareholders who feels that now the way is clear perhaps to do things slightly differently, but the brand has been established. It might be a useful investment. Clearly, at this stage, to get Toronto up running and back in the league, it's not going to cost the same as it's cost David to date. So it may well be that whoever this gentleman is sees it as actually a relatively good and timely investment. But I'm sure that there are, to me, this isn't about Toronto. This is about what does the sport do next, and not what does it do next in 2021, but this is the time to sit down. I think we discussed this a fair bit and decide what it wants to be. Because if it needs 12 teams next year, how does it go about doing that? It's got 2 choices in, you would think. One would be to involve some kind of a licensing system to bring up a team from the championship that hasn't been able to prove themselves on the field. So it's not promotion in that sense of the word, or it brings back Toronto with whatever assurances they need. But whatever we're doing, if it's either of those 2 options, it's moving Super League into something slightly different. And I think even social media now and word on whatever a grapevine might be is that there are some people within the organisation of the competition who are looking potentially at 14 clubs. And the issue that might be that that's the way to go. And clearly no detail about how those 14 clubs would be established or criteria to bring them into the competition, whether that would be all in one go or over a phased period of time, what they would need to provide to be included, whether the drawbridge would be pulled up when you got to 14 clubs. All of that, I think, should be discussed at the same time as whether Toronto come back or not, because it's not about what you do for the expediency sake of having a 12th club at Magic Weekend in 2021. It's about when you go to Skyton and negotiate this contract. And I think we all know that there isn't another broadcaster out there that's going to bite their hand off. There's going to be no battle between Murdoch and Packer this time to see.
Amazon.
They're not interested. Channel 4. I mean, they might be interested if basically they got the rights for virtually nothing. But clearly there isn't going to be a bidding war. You might be able to hive off the competition and give a little bit to 3 or 4 people, but the likelihood of getting double what you get at the moment is pie in the sky. So clearly we need to decide what we are offering, not for the next round of the deal, but for going forward. And I think if Toronto is an option, if promoting a team under a license is an option, if moving to 14 clubs is an option, this is the debate we need to be having. And Toronto needs to fall into that debate. To me, it's not just about the new investor in the Wolfpack, and they'll do the normal checks on him, and he'll either come up to scratch, or in 3 years' time we're going, and we should never have allowed this bloke to take the club because he didn't have the resource. But
that's the point there, Phil. Though, yeah, we'll do the normal checks, and that's worked
exactly
well in the past, hasn't it? Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's a bigger question than do Toronto come back. I think we'll all have our views on under what conditions they should be allowed back in, and they're gonna say they want to be in Super League or they're not interested. Will they get a share of the existing deal? Would a good probationary punishment for not completing the competition this year be that the final year of the current deal they still don't get access to anything, but that channel is now open for discussion with any future television deal, and all of that I think needs to be openly and honestly on the table and in discussion, and it's not just about who this bloke is.
Yeah, I think if with this new owner, I think there'll either be an understanding that either they get a full share going in the future or a half share, or as you said, that discussion changing, because otherwise there's just no point taking it on, because you'll just millions every year, and particularly next year when games in Canada, home games in Canada, are probably a long shot, at least at this stage. We don't know what will happen, but with COVID, it's not a certainty, put it that way. Yeah, if they don't get a distribution, you're just going to lose money, every.
Here's another question then, which I will pose and you can answer so that I don't get slated for it. There's no relegation this year. The clubs are in the last year of a television deal. They need some degree of security to get through 2021. And we all hope by the end of 2021, there'll be a very successful World Cup and some idea of what money is going to be pumped into the sport by its major broadcast partner. Should we now be announcing that there is no relegation in 2021 either? So if Toronto come back, they got a fair crack at their new investor, not just losing too much money and finding he hasn't got a team, that Neil Hudgell or whoever is passing the whole KR reins on to know that for the next year they are safe with their investment. There can be some kind of a transition. Michael Carter, I know, who is working extremely hard behind the scenes to keep Wakefield going and his new stadium on track, and apparently there is movement a little bit on that, but there's a limit to what can be done in these circumstances. Should we now be saying, acknowledging the fact that there are a couple of clubs in the Championship who would immediately be on the phone to their lawyers, that 2021 should be a season without promotion relegation too? Stabilise the sport?
We all like lawyers, don't we, Phil? Look, I think... yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, as you said earlier, probably now, the last few months have been the time to actually overhaul the whole game in the three divisions and make some strong decisions. But that hasn't happened and doesn't seem to be happening. So, yeah, you would think if going to Sky or any potential broadcaster with an idea of a future competition, effectively, we do need to go to a broadcaster and say, look, what do you want? How can we... You're going to give us X amount of money and maybe a little bit more. We'll do, we'll play games on Tuesday nights. We'll kick off at midnight to get the TV market in wherever, we have to be flexible in that way because we're not at a strong enough position to be making demands. So if Sky wants a 14-team competition, 14 full-time teams, then that would ideally be, I think, the way to go. But, I think we do need to be flexible on that.